guys, welcome back to my channel. Since I won't be in the garden for a while, I thought it'd be fun to learn something new in the kitchen. I've always wanted to try to make bread, and I never liked all those ingredients that were in the store-bought breads like high fructose corn syrup and some other ones I can't pronounce. But I guess I just never really took the time to actually give it a go. My family and I love sourdough bread, so I thought I would start there. From what I have researched, first I have to make what's called a sourdough starter. I believe that's how it gets its sour taste. That's at least a 7-day process, so hopefully this bread tastes delicious. So the way I'm going to start my starter is using equal parts flour to equal parts water. So I already measured out 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. So I'm going to mix those together in this jar. So I'm just going to mix them together. Trying to get all that dry flour off the bottom and mix it up really well. Okay, that looks good. I don't know if you can see in there, but it's nice and kind of pasty. So now that it's all mixed together, I'm supposed to put a loose lid on it. So I just have this canning lid that I'm going to set right on top. From what I read, it's supposed to get some airflow in there. So you don't want it to be super tight. So I'm just gonna let that sit there overnight. So day 1 is done. I'm going to have to repeat that process for about 6 more days. From what I have learned, I'm going to need to feed it, which means every day I'm going to have to discard some of what's in the jar and then add 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. And then mix that together and then let it sit. I'll save you guys the day by day, but I'll show you guys what it looks like when I first feed it. So I'll see you guys in a second. Welcome to day 2. I have left my starter out all night. It looks pretty good. I'll bring you guys in close so you can see what it looks like right now. But I see bubbles forming, and I guess that's a good thing. We want bubbles. But I'll bring you guys in close so you can get a good look. So this is what it looks like inside right now. There's a little bit of bubbles forming, so that's supposed to mean that there's life in there, which is a good thing. What I'm supposed to do next is take out most of the starter and then add flour and add more water. So let's go ahead and measure those out. Gonna measure out my water, tear the glass because I want it to be 100 grams. Perfect. So I have 100 grams of water. We're gonna do 100 grams. Almost there. Oh no, so close. Perfect. 100 grams of flour. This is a messy process. Now I have to take out a good majority of this, what we started yesterday. I'm just gonna put the discard in this. Ooh, that's slimy. Not like slimy, but that's a weird texture. You guys probably won't be able to tell on the camera, but it just like slips right off the spoon. Like, I don't know if you can see that. It's like, that's weird, that's crazy. Okay. That's probably good. I only left just a little bit in there. Probably about two tablespoons worth. So now I just have to add the flour and the water. And I'm gonna stir that up. And that's it for day 2. I'm going to do that same step for about 5 more days, so I'll just speed through that really quickly.
Day 3 through 8, nothing changed. The starter stayed the same. But on day 9, you'll see that the starter decided to rise and then fall again, which means that the fermentation process is working. When it starts to become bubbly and does those rises and falls, that means your starter is almost there. Day 10, day 11, and day 12 were all the same. Each of those days had very minor rises and falls. By day 13, I decided to do what's called a float test, which is where you take a cup of water and take some of the starter and you want to see if it floats on top. If it floats, that means the starter is ready to be used, but if it sinks, that means it's not quite there yet. My starter almost looked like it was going to float, but then it quickly sank to the bottom, so I know it's not quite mature enough yet to be used. I also decided to try something a little different on this day. Instead of just using all-purpose flour, I decided to add rye flour. So I did half rye flour and half all-purpose. I wanted to see if that would make a difference in how the starter was acting. I thought it would only take me about 7 days to get this starter ready, but it has taken me way longer. So I was kind of ready to be done by this time. But I didn't give up and I just kept going, and you'll see in a second how the rye flour did. So this is day 14, and I think adding that rye flour really helped. You can see that there was a significant rise and fall. It rose to almost double its size, which is what we want to see when a starter is becoming mature. Once it hits peak maturity, it's going to fall. The tape line is where it started, and so to see that it fell above the tape line is a good sign. The texture of the starter also changed. It's more airy and bubbly, and not as kind of liquidy as it was the previous days. By this point, I believed the starter was ready, but I didn't do another float test. I decided to keep going with adding the rye flour and the all-purpose flour just for a few more days.
Today is the day, guys. We finally can make bread. It took a bit longer for my starter to get ready just because I should have started it with the rye flour along with the all-purpose flour instead of just trying to use all-purpose flour. Once I added that rye flour in there, it took off. It was like perfect the next day. This is my original starter container. You can see it's kind of a mess. But what I did this morning, around 5 o'clock this morning, I took 100 grams of my starter and I put it in this container because I wanted just to feed a small amount. So I just did 100 grams of my starter, 50 grams of rye flour, 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and 100 grams of water. This has been going since 5 o'clock this morning. It's about 9:30 now. So it's eating, it's rising, which is good. So I'm gonna wait to use this until it just kind of levels off, where it's nice and active. So to start the bread, I have already measured out 400 grams of bread flour and 100 grams of whole wheat flour. So I'm gonna pour those into this bowl. And then I also have to measure 400 grams of room temperature water. It's kind of risky measuring it right into the bowl with the flour because water you can't really take back, but I'm gonna go for it. 400 grams exactly. And I'm just going to mix these two together, and while my starter is still becoming active, I'm going to let this sit for about an hour until my starter is really ready to use. There's actually a little bit of, it's a little too dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more water, just a little, and I'm going to use my hands to mix that up. That looks good. So from what I've learned, the reason why I'm going to just mix the flour and water first and let it rest before I put my starter in is that you want the flour to become more hydrated. So that's what I'm going to do. And we will just wait about an hour or so until let this hydrate, and then I'll add my starter and we'll keep going from there. And we're back. So the dough and the water, or the flour and the water have rested for an hour. We have to measure out 100 grams of our fresh starter now and mix it in. And then I had previously measured out 10 grams of salt that we're going to add as well. So first I'm just going to pour in the salt. Oh, it's a little stuck. Why is it stuck? Our 10 grams of salt. And then we are going to add 100 grams of our starter. It's very mature, very active, all goodness. It's very fluffy. Okay, and then we'll use that for something else a little later. So now what I have here is just a bowl of room temperature water, filtered water. I'm going to dip my hand in it. I'm just going to use my hand to mix together the starter and the salt into that dough. So I'm just going to go like this, mix it all together. I'm not kneading it, but I'm just squishing it together just to try to mix it up really, really well. And I'm going to add gonna add a little bit more water. Just really getting in there, squishing it. Yes. Hopefully you guys can see that. Scrape the sides, get as much of it together as I possibly can. I was actually really nervous starting this bread. Sourdough's intimidating. Doesn't seem like an easy bread to make. Okay, I think I mixed that as best as I can. I don't want to see any pockets of salt or any pockets of dryness. I think it's pretty good. That looks pretty good to me. So it just looks like this now. It's really sticky. Just gonna scrape off. I'm just gonna scrape off what I can off my hands. And then I'm gonna let this rest, cover it with the plastic wrap, let it rest for another hour. So I'll see you guys in a second. Another hour down. Now what I'm going to do is what's called stretch and fold. So I'll show you like this. So I'm going to take all sides of the dough, stretch it up, and then fold it over. Stretch it up, fold it over. And do that until you get all sides of the dough. I might need my scraper to loosen it up from the sides. I'll use my scraper, loosen it up a little bit. I'm gonna try to do this. Stretch, you don't want it to break, and fold. Then rotate it. It's hard to do like this. Okay, this is easier. Pick it up, stretch, fold. Oh, I forgot to wet my hand. I should have wet my hand. That would make it less sticky. Stretch and fold. And then another one. a stretch. Don't want it to break. Stretch as far as it can go. And fold. Just keep doing that until I get all the sides. And I guess this is supposed to strengthen the dough. I'm not sure what would happen if I didn't do this step, but I'm just going to follow the instructions. And I forgot to say this in the beginning, but don't mind my fold-up table. I thought it would be easier for me to use a fold-up table and face you guys versus me try to do it at the counter and kind of have my back towards you. But stretch and fold. I'm gonna use my scraper. So I'm gonna scrape it up, combine it all, and then it's gonna flip over. It's very sticky dough. Okay, and then we're going to wait another hour. There's a lot of waiting in making this sourdough. Cover that back up. Going to wash my hands and wait another hour. It's been about another hour, so it's time to do our folds again. I thought this angle would be a little bit better for you guys to see what I'm doing. Oh, keep forgetting. Wet my hand. Grab part of it, stretch. Oh, it got really stretchy. Fold. Fold. You can already feel it getting a little bit more tough. More stretchy, but more tough. I don't know if that made any sense. Not tough is not even the right word. It's just more tense. I'm really trying not to rip it, but it's my first time ever doing this. So please forgive me if I'm doing something wrong. And now we cover it and let it rest. I'm going to do that probably about 2 more times and then we can move on to the next step. So it's been many hours later. It's been probably about 6 hours later. I had to run some errands, pick kids up from school. So this sat for quite a while. But now it has all types of bubbles at the surface. I don't know if you can see it, but there's bubbles at the surface. So I guess that's part of the fermentation process. And I guess in sourdough that's supposed to be a good thing. So what I'm going to do now is wet my hands and lift and fold this under itself. It really doubled in size. I'm just going to lift it. I think I'm gonna scrape the sides. It's kind of stuck. But I don't want to pop those bubbles. I think that's how it gets those nice air pockets in it when you bake it. Let's see if that helped. Nope. I need a glass bowl. I took the bowl up with it. Lift. It will allow me to. And fold. This is a little bit more difficult. Lift and fold. Turn it. It's difficult with the plastic bowl. Okay. I probably should wash my hands, but it's okay. I'm going to lightly flour my surface and put my dough down. And then grab my bench scraper and then scrape towards me and rotate. Oh, I keep forgetting to wet my stuff. It's my first time, guys. I'm sorry. Never done this before. Gotta wet my hands, wet the bench scraper. So I think turn and scrape towards me. And my object here is to get the ball nice and tight. This was only a recipe for one loaf, but this looks pretty big. Those air bubbles look really nice. Okay, the ball is as tight as it's going to get. So I'm going to very lightly sprinkle some flour on top, just a little bit, and then let this rest for 30 minutes. My dough has now rested for 30 minutes. I'm going to sprinkle it with a little bit more flour just so it's a little bit easier for me to work with. I swear this dough, it looks so big. I'm almost tempted to cut it in half, but I'm just gonna follow the recipe. So I guess I have to loosen it up. Flip it over. Okay, it's all flipped over. It's not quite a circle anymore. I might be messing this up. Oh well. It is what it is. So now I have to fold the bottom to the middle, the two sides into the center. Stuff keeps moving around. Two sides into the center, and then the top gets folded over. And then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more flour just so it's easy for me to work with. Hopefully that doesn't mess it up too much. Hey, so something happened while I was wrapping up that day, getting the dough ready to rest overnight. But I wanted to show you the full completion of that process. I prepared another dough, so I just want to show you that really quickly. But then we'll get back to the first dough that I made, and you'll see the baking process of that up next. So this dough has been resting for 30 minutes or so, and so I just want to flip it over. Still not a perfect flip. I'll get it one day. And then do that same fold process. So the middle. This dough is a little bit more sticky, but same process. Fold it over, the sides like that. I'm just gonna fold in these corners. And then I'm gonna use my bench scraper because this is stickier than the first one I did. I'm gonna fold it. Ooh. I wet my bench scraper a little bit just so it can be easier to work with. Then I'm going to take it and kind of roll it over to pick it up, and then have my Banneton basket ready, and then plop it in there. That was kind of a big plop. And then just pinch it to seal. That's a nice bubble right there. Pinch it to seal. So I'm gonna wrap this up with, I'm going to wrap it with saran wrap and then put it in the fridge for overnight. And then you'll see me make my first loaf after this. But I just wanted to show you that process really quickly. Well, good morning, guys. Today is the day that we finally get to bake the bread. So I just took it out of the oven. I just took it out of the refrigerator. And it looks pretty good like that. So I'm going to sprinkle some flour, just a little bit. Going to flip it out of the basket. Ooh, it's so exciting. Just flip. That looks good. And then I got this scoring tool that I'm going to use to score the bread. And the purpose for this is for when it bakes, when it expands, it doesn't like do some weird kind of blowout thing. It's gonna really expand where I make those score lines. So I'm going to do, I guess, a square shape. I've never done this before, I'm kind of nervous. Uh-oh. Started coming apart, just bought it. I'm doing it about 1/4 of an inch deep. I don't know if this is exciting for you, but I'm pretty excited. And that's that. So I'm going to grab my Dutch oven really quickly and I'm going to put it in and throw it in the oven. I probably should mention that I preheated my oven to 500 degrees. It's been going for probably about an hour now. I want that Dutch oven nice and hot. And so I'm going to grab the Dutch oven, put it in there, and bake it for about 25 minutes with the lid on, and then about 15 to 20 minutes with the lid off. That was hot. It's been about 25 minutes, so time to take off the lid and see what it looks like. Whoa. That is already looking very beautiful. And so I'm going to turn down the oven to 450 and keep it in the oven for about 15 to 20 more minutes. It looks like it's done. Wow, look at that coloring. That looks beautiful. The bread is done. It looks really pretty, but the bottom got a little too burnt. but that's fine. It's my first ever loaf. So I'm gonna have to let it rest and we'll cut into it and when it cools completely down. They said if you knock on it and if it sounds hollow, then it's ready. I mean, it obviously looks ready. It looks pretty crispy, but that sounds pretty hollow to me. It looks so good. I'm so excited I could cry. It looks so pretty. So I'm gonna I don't have a cooling rack, but I have that trivet that comes with the Instant Pot. So I'm just going to let it cool all the way down right here. I can't wait to cut into it. Let's cut into it now. Ooh, I don't know if you can hear that. That sounds so nice. It's as cool as it's gonna get. Well, no, it can get cooler, but I'm impatient and I really want to cut into it. I'm actually nervous. Wow, that smells so good. There's our loaf. The bottom is a little bit more crispy than I would want it, but oh, that feels so soft. It smells delicious. Let's try a slice. I don't know about you, but I like lots of butter on my bread. That's some sourdough bread right there. Wow, that's really good. It's, yep, nice and sour. The outside is crispy. The bottom's a little too crispy. I could eat this entire loaf. I can't believe that. Look at those air pockets. That looks so good. It tastes incredible. I have never felt more accomplished. I mean, I'm sure I have felt more accomplished, but this was such a great accomplishment. It took so long from the starter to the dough. That whole process was worth it. I suggest everybody make sourdough bread. It's definitely worth it. But thank you guys so much for going on this sourdough journey with me. It was a long one, but we made it through. Now that I have a mature starter, I can try other sourdough recipes, and that's super exciting. I think the only thing I would do differently next time when I make bread is just not keep it in as long. My oven might run a little hotter than it says it does, so I might have to get a little thermometer just to see what the true temperature is. But I think I'll just not let it stay in the oven for as long next time. But other than that, this was a success. If you guys want the recipe that I use, I'll link it in the description box below. And if you're interested in any of the tools that I use, I can also link those. I have no affiliation with them, but they were good. Thank you guys for hanging out with me these past few weeks. It was a journey. I'm not gonna lie, I did feel like giving up, but I didn't. I kept going with that starter and it finally worked out. So I just thank you guys for hanging out and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys. Oh my God, so good.